Today, I want to talk about data-driven decision-making and how we are creating the right environment in organizations to make this happen. Data now has become the fuel. Companies realize that if they're moving towards more data-driven decision-making, they will become more successful. And I'm very pleased to say I'm joined here by Sudheesh Nair. Hi, Sudheesh. You are the CEO of ThoughtSpot, a California-based AI-driven and search-driven analytics company, and you've just done some work with Harvard Business Review with their research arm on doing a big research project to look at how companies are actually in a position to be more data-driven. So, what prompted you to do this piece of research, and what were some of the key findings for you?
Yeah, so the research that we have done, first of all, thank you so much, Bernard, for having me here. The research that we have done is with Harvard Business Review called Meet the New Decision Makers. And first, we wanted a partner like HBR on our side because we wanted to do this at a global scale and do it in a way that the substance is not just believable, trustworthy, but also eminently sort of actionable for companies. And we're pleased to see that the results that we have actually gotten are hitting both those marks that we set out. The first goal was for going global. So we had almost 460 execs from all over the world, Asia, Europe, and US came together to deliver these insights.
And what would you say were some of the key findings for you?
So the biggest so before we go into the findings, maybe I can just give you a little bit of why did we do it? Like, what's the reason why we thought there is a necessity for a research product like this in the world of decision making today in the enterprise? It's not like enterprise companies have not been using data or analytics. It's what has happened is that in the last I would say 5 years or so, a customer's expectations of what the business should do for them has radically shifted. 5 years ago, 10 years ago, if you call an insurance company, it was normal that you will give your information. Who are you? What's your number? What business have you done with? And then when the call is transferred to somebody else, you are patiently explaining that again and again and again by the time you get the results that you're looking for. In the last 5 years, if you see, you don't talk to a live person anymore. I mean, that would be an act of God if you actually got a live person. You speak to systems, you speak to AI, you speak to machines. So in a sense, the businesses are collecting so much more data from you. At the end of it, when the customer is giving you location information, the vitals, the private information, other forms, the contract the business is making is, when I'm collecting all this information, I'm going to deliver personalized, relevant experiences for you. So when a human being comes on board, it is so critical that the frontline worker, she knows the consumer, and her time to fix, time to action is really short, and it is extremely personalized service. And this is like the basic contract of digital transformation that a consumer is doing. When I'm giving you my vitals and my location, I'm expecting this kind of service. We don't want the large business to treat an employee and the consumer like a number, like an average. So that front line where the rubber meets the road, where the consumer interaction is happening, the real clients are talking to your business, it is so critical now more than ever to infuse with relevant data, relevant actions, and relevant insights. And most businesses, as we found from the study, is miserably failing at that.
Okay, so some of the numbers that you've shared with me are that 90% of companies say that success depends on having data-driven decision making, but only about 20% of companies are actually giving them the tools and the environment to make this happen.
Absolutely. So what we found is that when you look at it, the companies completely agree. 90% of them agree that it is the right thing to do. And when we go inside the companies that have actually implemented, even though it's a minority, only 1/5 of the companies have actually done this to a level where we can call it productized. But within those, we are seeing that 72% of them are seeing increased productivity. 69% of them are seeing their NPS score, the customer satisfaction score, has gone up. 67% of them are reporting that the employees are happier. So the productivity is better, consumers are happy, the people who are serving them feel like, I have more of a purpose. So everyone agrees that it is the right thing to do. However, only 20% of them have done, and 43% of them, we call them laggards. They haven't even started. Now, when we dive deeper into it, as the study will show, that the most surprising thing is that if you ask people, why are you not doing it? They will say, oh, we don't have the data, or the quality of data is not good. I'm sure in this industry, you hear this all the time. However, data is only the third thing, not the first, not the second, that's holding them back from doing the right thing, which they clearly agree that it is the right thing to do.
So what are the first and second?
See, that's the thing. The first thing is leadership.
Yeah.
If leaders are not on board, nothing is going to happen. And you go deeper into it, why are leaders not open? And in my experience, interacting with the Global 2000, CEO level people, CSO level people, what we're finding is they are happy to talk about data, but they're actually afraid of data. They would rather lean on gut and say, I want to make a decision based on my gut, my experience, and find data that justifies the decision I've already made. Because they think somehow gut means it is going to contradict the data. However, in reality, what we have found is people who have experience, 15, 20 years of experience, their gut is actually built based on data. They might be already moving in the right direction. There is no need for them to be afraid of actually getting the data to improve their gut, augment their experience, but they are somehow struggle. So number one reason is leadership and their inability to sort of understand. The second is culture. Culturally, they're not set up. They're afraid that this is a zero-sum game. If my data become more useful than your data, I win and you lose. So what happens is that customers start hogging data. They create silos. They protect their job security, their information security, because information is power. So those two things actually are standing in the way before we talk about tools and data, where companies like ThoughtSpot could actually make a difference. But more important than any of that is the leadership and the culture.
Okay, so leadership and culture, and then tools and the right data. Do you have any companies that you can think of that you would class as leaders? Any examples of good leadership and companies that have created the right organizational culture that actually where leaders are happy for frontline workers to access the data and make decisions more autonomously?
This is a great question. And here is where I found that, there is this old saying that necessity is the mother of invention, isn't it? There are some industries that are sort of built with a lot of margin, a lot of buffer. They have a monopoly, they have a lot of, things that are going well for them. And then there are industries that are very shoestring margin. If you think of retail, for example, it's not something that you will consider to be the cutting edge of industry innovation, but retail is a low margin business. And maybe because of that, maybe because of the leadership, maybe because the culture, there are some amazing retail companies like ThoughtSpot customers like Walmart and Nike and others, where you see that they are absolutely striving to be the best. Now, Walmart is not a surprise, because if you think of modern data warehousing sort of grew out of Walmart. They are so good at collecting data and implementing and using it to make real decisions. They always were really good at data-driven decision making as a culture and as a leadership. However, what they've also recently gotten really good at is pushing this all the way to the edge, where the frontline workers, and we are talking about a retiree, a pensioner in your British language, who is probably doing a store associate's job. If a consumer walks in and asks for a product, and let's say the product doesn't exist, simply saying that we don't have it is one way of doing it. But another way would be, we don't have it. Here is another product, or this is when I can get you that product. Here is how I can ship it to you. This is how much it's going to cost you. There's 5-6 things that at that front line, if I were to give, the consumer is going to walk away with a completely different experience and a better brand awareness around the company. So companies like Walmart, companies like Nike in the retail space, I believe are doing this at a scale. I mean, we're talking about hundreds of thousands of employees in the front line being through training, through enablement, through facilitators, they're able to deliver this, which means that it is possible for any industry, any company to take a leadership position and reap the rewards of it.
Slightly more difficult. Do you have any examples of a company that you would see as a laggard in based on your study?
Yeah, so I wouldn't name it, but I will tell you the laggards that I'm finding are in places like healthcare, where I would hope that they actually get better. And what I'm finding is that in healthcare specifically, it is very convenient to sort of blame government and governance as sort of an easy escape route to say, I cannot change. I can't change because of government. I can't change because of privacy. This is patient data, so we can't do it. But what we're also finding is that is the opportunity that startup companies are finding, because that sort of inability to say we're not going to change. Anytime an industry says that we are not going to change, that's an opportunity for disruption. Now, I'm not saying that startups are going to fundamentally disrupt healthcare and everything is going to change, but this sort of lack of agility in innovation in healthcare is a cause of concern. And the last thing I will also tell you, the cost of healthcare as the population in the Western Hemisphere is aging, it's uncontainable. And it is in that context, now more than ever, we need to be able to cut cost and increase efficiency of services, which is life and death in the world of healthcare. Data analytics should play a huge part, and pushing it all the way. If you go to a doctor and just look at how much time they spend talking to you as a patient versus how much time they turn around and look at a monitor, entering data and taking that data. Then you go to a pharmacy. How much time do they actually take those pills from the bottles and give it to you versus entering data, removing data? It just tells you that it is not efficient. There is a lot of area for improvement, better productivity, better quality, and absolutely better customer satisfaction. And it is a pity that we are stuck here in the world of healthcare. I won't name the thing, but you can probably imagine some of the largest healthcare companies.
Yeah, and I know them. I can picture them in front of me. Okay, so leadership and culture then. What are some of the practical things organizations can do to address this? So how do you, I guess, changing the culture, I can see, how do you change some of the leadership problems? Is it simply changing the leaders or changing their attitudes?
Look, I think in my mind, both are connected, leadership and culture. Every company starts with a specific type of culture, and it's sort of difficult to grow out of that. So for example, if you take Google, their initial rallying cry was do no evil, right? And democratize access to unstructured data. That was their thing, and they actually did a good job. Even though Google has become so big and they have changed, they are doing a lot of things that are not connected to their original ethos. You can still see, though, that the fact that they grew out of do no evil is still driving them. So the core of the company does matter. Walmart is like that. Sam Walton started by saying, we want to make sure that ordinary people should have access to high quality groceries. Let's make sure that happens. So that matters. However, in specifically coming to this research, when it comes to data, what we are finding is that as the companies get bigger, there will be multiple departments, multiple functions created, and each one of them will have a local CEO or a local COO, and they all start building and hoarding data, and they don't share the data. So to change that, the one leadership position that we are finding is bring someone from outside as a chief transformation officer, chief digital transformation, or chief data officer, analytics officer, and make sure that they are empowered to break those silos. And that is going to be very hard, because complexity is job security in a lot of businesses. So going after that complexity and trying to simplify decision making, making it faster is hard. So leadership on top, CEO down, it's going to be so critical that you have someone whose daily job is to break silos, because there's only one goal, which is don't worry about the silos inside. Because when a consumer looks at your company, they don't see silos, they see one entity. So let's behave like that. The second thing is that you have to have changes. That is, we are finding that people who have data analytics background are growing up with the business. So you cannot be the old school analytics, which is my job is to understand databases, schema, SQL. I don't care about what my business does. Those days are gone. There is no data analytics without understanding business priorities. You cannot be oil and water. If you're building a report without understanding what this report is used for, you're failing. You cannot be building report and showing that my job is to build reports. I run a report factory. Those days are 2000, 2010. Today, it's all about interactive ad hoc decision making, where data analytics is a way to make it better and faster and more relevant. And in that context, there is no data analytics without understanding business priorities. So bringing them together. So what we are finding is data analytics leaders are growing up and getting closer to the business and then owning both sides of the business in most cases. So those kind of changes are extremely critical if you want to change the culture from a leadership level.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And from a cultural level, how do you make sure that frontline employees actually are given access to data, where you create a culture where they have the freedom to use this data to actually make decisions, where you empower them with data?
Yeah, this is a hard one, Bernard. I don't really have a clear answer for this, but I can tell you what I'm finding transformational leaders. So for example, I had an opportunity to meet with Raj Subramaniam, the CEO at FedEx. FedEx is a company that's been around for a while. But when you meet with him, it doesn't come across as if I'm talking to the second in command for a multinational large company that is essentially the nerve center of every global shipment and transaction. You kind of feel like you're talking to a Silicon Valley startup entrepreneur. The energy, the ideation, the thinking, the fact that that kind of leaders are now taking charge of larger portion of business is actually a good sign. What we are also seeing is that people like that are connecting with government, because I do think as we start thinking about AI, and AI is going to play a huge part in this democratization of data insight all the way to the front line, because the decision making has to be enabled and enhanced by AI. And AI will require some level of governance and control from government. So the fact that business leaders are thinking more technology first, they all talk like Silicon Valley innovators, and that they're actually now working with governments, leaders, is actually pretty important, because when you have regulations, which I think is necessary in the world of AI, when you have that coming together and then opening it up, the last part of this is transparency. When you start doing more and more in AI, you will see that biases will creep in. The color, the accent, the creed, the age, experience, all those things are actually going to go into the models. So there again, having transparent models, not an closed AI, but more of a transparent AI when it comes to AI or AGI, that allows us to sort of bring this. So it's three vectors, transformational leaders, government working together with businesses, and then transparent access to AI logic and algorithms. When you bring them together, I think good changes potentially could happen in the future.
Very good. Maybe we can bring this back to your own company and your own culture. I like the strapline for your culture saying selfless excellence.
Yeah.
Maybe you can explain a bit more about how ThoughtSpot is creating this kind of environment where you are a leader, where you enable people to make decisions using data.
Yeah, so selfless excellence for us is very simple. It simply means that be the best at what you do, but put your team first before yourself. And that's a hard thing to get right sometimes, because you end up in a lot of companies, you'll call this brilliant jerks, right? People who are really, really good at what they do, but they just absolutely have no respect for the people around them. And in the world of technology, we sort of cherish people like that. We have this idea of the Howard Hughes sort of misfits who will come in and change and solve everything. We fundamentally believe that's a myth. In the new world, we need brilliant people, but they also have to be selfless enough to put their interests secondary to the company, the team members' interests. And it's a hard thing to get right, but we are pushing hard on it. With that as the core driving purpose, our purpose has been very clear. Our purpose has been democratize access to insight to anyone who seeks. And that's it. Most of our people came from Google. And what we did is very simple. That is, structured data drives businesses. And not everyone can speak SQL. Business speaks natural language. Data speaks structured language, SQL, Python, queries, coding. So what happens is you end up having a group of people who speak this language, but not the business. And the people who speak business don't understand that. And then you have a transformation layer or translation layer in between, the analytics people, the FP&A people. And that, I think, is a fundamentally broken model. We wanted to make sure that we have a streamlined process. How do we make sure that a store clerk can ask 10 questions without learning SQL? So we built a layer which is natural language-based layer that can access vast amount of data and deliver answers to the questions you asked. And then as you ask questions, behind it, we will use artificial intelligence to provide insights to questions that you did not ask, but you should have. For example, how is my red shoe sales in Bristol? And the answer comes back to me immediately. And along with that, I'll say, did you know that last April, red shoes in Bristol went down by 3%, but in London, it was actually up by 5%. Now that insight, even though I didn't ask, might allow me to say, you know what, I'm going to probably reroute some of my inventory so I will never run out and make the most for the business. A merchandising specialist probably could never get it if she's just staring at a report. And this ability to sort of understand and ask the 10 question, is it a seasonal thing? Does it happen every quarter? Who buys it? Are they men or women? Are they young or old? Do they use Android or iPhone? I may have 10 questions. Imagine getting those 10 questions answered within a matter of 3 or 4 minutes as opposed to waiting for another report. Your decision making will be better. That is what ThoughtSpot is about. And we have done, we are still at early stage. We still have long ways to go to be a real change maker in this industry. But we're pretty happy with what we have reached so far.
Very good. We've spent a lot of time talking about the first two enablers, leadership and culture. What do you see as the critical stumbling blocks or the things that companies need to look out for when it comes to the other two, having the right tools in place and the right data in place?
Yeah, so data is critical. And look, I think every customer that I meet, almost all of them, will tell me two things about it. One, we don't have the data, or they will say we have the data, but it is not clean. So come back to me in 2 years, because my primary project right now is to clean the data, collect the data, move it to cloud, whatever. And then I will start thinking about analytics. And to me, that is one of the biggest sort of false thinking around this thing. Because first of all, you can never get the data clean enough to say, oh, it's all clean. Now I'm going to do some analytics magic around it and then deliver just amazing outcome for the business. It is never going to happen. The best thing you can do is to make sure that you remove layers and then go to the granular data. So sometimes people ask what makes ThoughtSpot different, and is it search, it is AI? Maybe. The real difference in ThoughtSpot is that we removed layers. I mean, you are a person who knows this industry well enough. So if you look at how BI works, you have granular data that you collected from everybody. Then on top of that, you will create aggregates. Then you create summaries. Then you create views, and then you create reports. So if someone asks for a report, if you have an aggregate, if you have a summary created, then you can deliver. If not, you have to create another group, and that's where the delay is. At the core of the differentiation of ThoughtSpot is that we work at the most granular level of data, no matter how big it is. Again, the Google DNA helps with that scale and speed. So what happens is, even if you don't have clean data, you can just throw everything at ThoughtSpot, because we collect everything. As you start using, the business users will start asking questions. Like I said, why is the red shoe down? Is it iPhone or Android? What campaign worked in the last 10 years? What did not work? By the time I ask those questions, because it is the most granular level, the lack of cleanliness in the data will sort of appear. And as they appear, they will clean it up. So you're not waiting for a 2 year, 3 years to sort of build the data warehouse, build, clean, and move it to cloud, then start delivering value. You are doing all of that as part of it. And today's environment, you don't want to spend money unless there is a real short-term return on investment that is ready to deliver for the business. That's the kind of projects that we need to deliver, and we are able to do that. So these two problems are always there when it comes to data. And then you'll see the same thing when it comes to tools. So I'm not saying ThoughtSpot is the answer to every data problem, but we are focused on use cases where Global 2000, where there's large amount of data and decision making is slowed down because of not having those delivered directly to business users, and we are able to make a difference there.
Great, that was fantastic. Thank you so much, Sudheesh. Really good talking to you, and I'm looking forward to reading the full report. The new decision makers. How do we equip frontline workers with the skills for success in the data age? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Bernard, for having me. Hopefully, we'll get to see each other live very soon in the future. Thank you.
Thank you.